Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're receiving this information. My name is Rafael Vázquez Guzmán, and I am the CEO and president of Líderes del Futuro Avanzando, a nonprofit organization in Northern California that advocates, collaborates, and on a daily basis works with undocumented families from Latin America and migrant families and refugee families from Latin America. Today, we have the opportunity to have a conversation with three authors of a wonderful book that just came out about DACA recipients and their lives. And so I want to thank Eric Palafox for taking the time and being here with us. And we have Itzel Lopez and we have Maria Salcedo, who are taking the time and being with us this afternoon. So, Eric, again, I want to thank you for taking the time and being here. Um, can you tell us a little bit about what made you choose to be part of this specific project?
Yeah, thank you, Rafael. Again, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Eric Palafox. I'm currently doing a PhD, finishing a PhD at UC Davis. And I guess one of the main reasons that I wanted to be part of this book is it's pretty much just share my story. I just wanted to make sure that not just like that others know who I am, but also know, like, just have may perhaps just share my story to perhaps have other people find something that we share, like some similarities between us, like myself and the reader. Um, Especially because obviously we have all of us have different stories, and I think there's many stories to tell. Everyone has different upbringings, different past, different ancestors, different all there's different histories, and you never know, one might have something similar or experience something similar to yourself. And I thought it was important to just share, just have a little bit of um, another, perhaps like another voice, just have out there to represent others that might feel represented as well. And so I thought that originally the idea of having this book, of having uh, many collections of stories on DACA and how it has affected us. Thought that was really valuable, and yeah, I just wanted to be another part of it. Wanted to see, someone else. Maybe there's someone else who's a scientist who's into STEM that has gone through the same, um, or had not the same experiences, but who have felt the same ways, just being, for example, in STEM, or being in doing a master's or doing a PhD, for example. And so that's the main reason I want to just share my story, but also hopefully have someone else identify with my story, and just put it out there and just inspire, other people.
Definitely. And the book is called The Journey of DACA Students Living in the United States Today. Again, it's important for people who are undocumented to hear from other people who have gone through similar experiences. And so, Itzel, can you tell us your specific choice in putting yourself out there by writing a chapter in this book? What motivated you to do that?
Yes, hi, Rafael. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Itzel Lopez. Right now, I'm a school counselor. Graduated last year with a master's in PPS education. So, the reason that inspired me to be part of this, I think, was mainly the connection that I have with you, Rafael. Throughout the years, I feel that you've helped me so much with DACA, and just seeing when you sent out this invitation of being a part of this book, I had already in mind that I wanted to write something. I just didn't really know how to start it or how would I even write about it. So I thought this was such a great opportunity to write a small part of my story. It was definitely scary to be put out there, but I also thought, I'm here, I'm in this career to inspire others, and what better way to do it than also write my story and share it with others that might be going through the same thing, or just in general, like our DACA community that that doesn't feel, that they're enough at times, or that they can't get an education or go far in life. Because I think for me, many times in my career, that's how I felt. I felt that, what if DACA goes away and all this? So I think it was just the way to inspire others that are on the same boat like we are, but also others that don't have DACA, right? To not give up, to go to school and to still get an education. So for me, it was mainly that, the connection that I built with you is, I feel like, my mentor for as long as I can remember. And so that to me was also very valuable.
Thank you for that. I think, again, as I was mentioning earlier, the fact that we all live in isolation, right? And I think that this book allows us to say, oh, there's somebody out there who's going through a similar experience. Maria, welcome. Thank you again for taking the time and being here. What motivated you specifically to write your own chapter for this book?
Thank you, Rafael. My name is Maria Salcido. I currently am an educator in LAUSD. And what motivated me to be part of this book, to write a chapter in it, I would agree with Itzel, is my trust in you as a community leader. Having the trust that you would treat our stories with care, with respect, and would amplify it in a beautiful way. And I also wanted to be able to connect with other undocumented people. I think I knew one person who was part of the project, but I don't know many others. And I've gotten to know some of them, and it's been a really beautiful experience. And it can be isolating being undocumented, even though there's a lot of us, because there's still many of us who are, as has been said before, in the shadows, right? And as an educator, I see that on the daily with my students. And although I have been someone who has been vocal since I was a kid about my status, this opportunity also provided me the ability to reflect as an adult what it means to be undocumented. So arriving at this country at the age of 5, and then kind of just going through life, experiencing the system of the United States of America as an undocumented person, obviously as a woman, as a person with many different privileges, including my skin tone, the place where I grew up, the schools where I went to, right? So it's important to include the balance of it all. But I really wanted, I felt like it was time to reflect what it meant to be undocumented as an adult, and kind of also tap into what it has meant thus far now with my adult brain fully developed, So this has been a really great experience, and I'm very thankful.
Yeah, and again, it's wonderful that we found people that were not just from Mexico, but one of the authors who couldn't be here today, but one of the authors is from El Salvador. And again, he had to go through a different experience just to get to this country. And that's something that at some point we hope to have a conversation with him so that we can share that piece. But as you said, originally there were over 800,000 individuals that were given the opportunity, who demanded and got DACA. And now it's down to about 600,000. Some of them have gotten married, have gotten a different immigration status, whether it is residency and so on. Some of them lost their DACA, and it's important to have this type of dialogues. Eric, coming back to you, could you give us an idea of writing a chapter? You sit down, you go through this whole experience. What was the most challenging part of writing your chapter, deciding what to put in it, what to leave out of your chapter?
Yeah, so for my chapter, I think I struggled the most. The thing that I struggled the most with was trying to make it not as I guess like scientific logical as I usually tend to write things. Um, and it kind of forced me to be more mindful of things, the way I think and the way I feel things, and especially the memories that I have of the past. And so it was a little challenging for sure. I mean, that just a little background. It's like I've been in academia for years and years, and it's just scientific writing. It'd be logical. Facts are facts. That's it. Like it's only black and white kind of situation. So it was a little challenging. Yeah, just like, this is like something the opposite of just being like an academic paper, like a logical paper. It's more of like it needs to have some heart in a sense. So that was a little challenging for me, but it was also really, I guess, like freeing to just write something that is not so logical and something that I realize is like, okay, this is actually who I am. Yes, I'm a scientist, but I also have this experience, and I also have lived through all of these experiences before, and just reflecting a little bit on that. So I don't know, in a sense, it kind of made me realize a lot of things that I didn't know about myself and also about others who are around me, who like for example, like my parents, who also went through similar, who were always there for me when I was going through, um, through life. And so it was really nice to have that little kind of like something kind of changed in my mind, I will say, of just like, okay, you can be logical, but you can also be a little bit of just I guess kind of like forgiven, like forgive yourself for things that happen, or like forgive others also as well. So it was like a healing process. And so yeah, so again, I struggle a little bit with that at first, of like, okay, writing, this is too dull, this is too logical. Let's just break those barriers and then just write, just what's in your, like, in your mind, but also like what's in your heart, your soul. So that was a little bit of a challenge that I had at first, but I am glad that I wrote this chapter, because it definitely changed who I am as a writer, but also as a person. And yeah, so I think that was the main thing.
Yeah, I think that, and we've been hearing from some of the people who have read the whole book, but in specifically referring to you, a few people have said that they can see the child in you in some of these pieces that you wrote. And on the other side of that, the academia, right? They can see that you are definitely getting that PhD and that, but the fact that you can play with both pieces of that, it's beautiful. Itzel, coming back to you, what was the most challenging part of writing the chapter for this book? And perhaps, I don't know if you wrote, right? Some people started writing and then reported that they had to go back and said, nope, I have to get started all over again. And some people started writing and it just triggered all these memories, right? What was your experience? What was the most challenging part of writing your chapter for this book?
Yeah, I think for me the most challenging was all the memories that, and then just seeing how everything has affected me, and kind of forgiving myself for a lot of things, because it's trauma and trauma and trauma. So just getting here, getting moved so many times, so much change. I was a very extroverted kid when I was in Mexico, and coming here, I became the opposite. So they were just writing the memories of kind of my own Latino Hispanic culture, turning their face away from me and not wanting to speak Spanish. So I think all of that, I was such a happy kid. So coming here feeling like, oh, like culture shock, and it was just so hard to think about the memories. So I think definitely some of the memories of my childhood, but also seeing the effect that caused on a teenage girl. And for a while, I would always blame myself and think, why was I this way towards my parents, or why was I this way, or why did I make those decisions? So I think it was just coming back to thinking all about all the damage that it causes on a kid, on a teenager. And it was just that was the hard part, just many times crying. And every other memory for me, it was just hard. And I think it was the first time that I actually sat down and thought about every gap of, or every year of my life, when I was 8, when I was 9, when I was 10, high school, all of it. And we finally kind of came together of why I was the way I was. And I kind of forgiven myself for many things too. And maybe people now understand a lot of things too, if they get a chance to read my story, right? They get to understand I was going through a lot at that time, when things should be, a kid should be able to learn how to ride a bike here. Like, I mean, in land, and I learned to ride a bike in the desert as I'm crossing the border. So there's just so many things that you think, and it was just that was really hard for me.
Yes, thank you for that. Again, the book is called The Journey of DACA Students Living in the United States Today. There is no other book like this one in this country at this moment. And the reason that there isn't is because of how traumatic it can be to go back and remember some of this stuff, whether you were bullied, whether you experienced some type of neglect, whatever the situation was. But I agree with you, this whole process of migration makes us quiet, right? I too migrated many years before you, and I went through that experience of, thinking that I was a happy child when I was young, and then when I came here, I would sit in the back of the classroom, and in the 18 years that I did outreach on behalf of a local community college, I kept seeing those children in the back of those English as a second language classrooms, and I kept reminding, oh, that was me when I first arrived. So again, those memories. And so reading through the chapters of this book, for me, it has also been connecting even more with all of y'all, since I've been privileged to know all of y'all since you were young. And at the same time, understanding some of the behaviors, some of the conversations we've had long before. So thank you for that. Maria, again, originally we started this book in having a conversation with 15 people. And over time, as I write at in the book, it went down to 13, and eventually went down to 10, and eventually went down to 9. And right before we went to publish, it went down to 8. And out of respect, I didn't necessarily ask people, why do you not want that chapter to be included in this book? But I like to believe that it is because, right, all the memories, and who's going to read it, and what are they going to think? For you, Maria, what was the most challenging part of deciding to a certain degree what to even include in your chapter?
Yeah, it was an internal struggle for sure. That obviously manifested externally, and you mentioned it earlier, having it written, deleting it completely, rewriting it again, deleting it again. The emotional process, the memories that get brought up, as has been previously mentioned, are yours. And at the same time, in order to move on, as those events are happening, or as you are triggered, you have to move on, right? Because you have to continue with life, you have to continue surviving. And although, I'm privileged enough to have had the ability to go to school and to continue my education, it was a really I don't know if I want to say humbling, but it was just like an eye-opening experience, because I tend to be a person who can be pretty vocal and has, you know, again, had, not that I don't have an issue, but I, you know, from a young age have tried to normalize, like, we're here, you know, undocumented people are here. And especially because of all the shame and criminalization and dehumanization that goes into a lot of us, whether you're immigrating from Africa or whether you're immigrating from Central America or Asia, you know, the original illegal immigrants, the Europeans, you know, that are continuing to immigrate, whether you're immigrating from Canada or Mexico, South America, wherever you're immigrating from to this country, there's a story behind every person who comes, right? And many of us, in order to continue on living or existing, we choose to brush it aside, you know? And so it brought up a lot of trauma, but I think the part that I struggled with the most is trying to include as many narratives and perspectives as I could. And I finally just had to say, you just have to submit what you have, because it's impossible. And as you said, many of those stories are not told because of the trauma, right? Because of the shaming and because of the criminalization. And that is why it's imperative to create spaces like these, right? And I commend my colleagues, those that participated, even if they didn't make it onto the book, for even opening themselves up to the idea. Because it's difficult. It's difficult to relive these things that some of us block for a decade or more, right? And then it comes up and you have to deal with it and then wake up in the morning and go to work, or go and be with your partner, or go and help your family out, you know? So I don't know if I answered the question, but that's my answer.
No, absolutely. And I think that I would say you went even beyond what the question was. And the reason is because we have to, the immigrant and the refugee, it's almost, I would say, someone who has to have multiple personalities, right? At home, you are one person. At school, you are somebody else. At work, you have to be somebody else. When you're driving to school or work or whatever, and you're just holding on and driving at the speed limit because you are concerned that today might be the last day. And how many of our parents leave home at 4 or 5 in the morning, especially those who work in the fields, restaurants, all these places, and they look at themselves in the rear view mirror and they don't know if today they are going to come back, right? And so writing about our experiences can be, again, relieving all those emotions of fear and anxiety and so on and so forth. And so I appreciate, again, your willingness, for all of you, your willingness to share. And so I'm going to introduce our good friend and colleague and somebody else who I've had the opportunity and privilege to work with. Jose Ordóñez has been someone I've known for many years. And out of this book, he is the only individual who's not from Mexico. And so, you know, the goal was to include other individuals from Latin America, but is rare, and it's rare to find people who are willing to trust our organization, Líderes del Futuro Avanzando, with your stories, right? We ended up with first drafts from multiple people, and we will just keep those there. But again, when people said, I no longer want to be part of this, we respect that. And so, Jose, welcome. We're having this wonderful conversation about the book that you contributed to, called The Journey of DACA Students Living in the United States Today. And we might as well call it The Journey of DACA Students Living in the Divided States Today. And I know that the original intent was to talk about it from that perspective. And for those people who end up reading the book, some of the questions were addressed from that perspective, because this country now is so divided. But that division affects us all. So, Jose, thank you for joining us in this discussion. Could you share with us what was perhaps the most difficult thing for you in deciding what to include in your chapter of the book?
Yeah, thank you, Rafael, and thank you everyone as well. And it's an honor to be here included with all of you. Going perspective to your question, Rafael, I think one of the things that was the most difficult to include, one was just making sure that what I share is one, the truth. So I definitely check with what I wrote, and just to make sure that it was the way how it happened with some of the family members, because it had been so many years, especially from that moment when I left my beautiful house in El Salvador. I just wanted to make sure that I had the right details and that everything that I wrote actually makes sense from that perspective. If I remember exactly where when things were happening at the right time, in the right date, as well as being able to come back to those memories. I think that was a challenge, because it was the last time I was able to say goodbye to my friends. It was the last time I was able to say goodbye to a lot of family members. It was the last time I was able to hear the voice of many loved ones that for some of them I haven't been able to hear back since, it's been about 18 years now that I haven't been able to hear those voices back. And I try to remember that as much as I can, but also now putting it in paper is a completely different process. And it was a different process because in many ways I felt blocked in being able to write. I felt maybe that I wasn't representing those voices correctly. And so being able to do all of that, I think, was just a difficult process as well, to make sure that I included everyone who really has supported me in this life. I think after all the efforts and sacrifices that my family have done for me, as well as many friends as well too, and many people who have helped me in my entire life to be able to achieve what I have done currently now, I think it was also it was at least the least I could do for them to also be able to include them as well. It's not just my success of what I've been able to achieve here, it's the success of everyone who has helped me here. And so I think that was important, because if I would have written just very little and not included a lot of the people who I thought should be included in this book, I would have not felt comfortable with myself in just writing what I had in there. So I think that was also another difficult part, because I could say more, of course, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone was included. And I think I had less trouble with just writing, because I do like writing, but maybe it was the opposite. It's just I just felt like I was writing maybe too much at some point. So I wish I could definitely share more at some point. But I think that was probably the most challenging thing, just making sure that everyone was included. And I think that's just a way of how I grew up all my life. My parents have taught me that from the very beginning, and I think it's a way of honoring them as well, those teachings that I have now.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Yeah, again, it's important to, I can only imagine as you all wrote your chapters, what you decided to put in there, what you decided to leave out. And I definitely encourage all of you all to, beyond this book, maybe this book will serve as an introduction for people into your lives, and then eventually you can decide to write your own books, right? But this is a process, and so far that's what you've all shared, that there were moments where you had to question, right? Do I really want to share this? Do I not want to share this? Going back to Eric here for a second, from your perspective, who would you want to read your chapter? Who should read this book in general?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of a difficult question to answer. Mostly because I will say that everyone should read this, but that seems like, a really generic answer. Um, I guess I would like to make to make it more personal. I think that people who definitely know me or like should read this book, for starters, and especially kind of was something that something like that Jose kind of mentioned a little bit, kind of reminded me of that, of like the people who were part of my life that maybe they don't know, that a little bit a different perspective of, they have their experiences. Yes, we all had our uh, we share the same experiences, but then it's not the same because each of us are different, right? So I would like to personally, would like to have people who know me, people who like know me through my whole life, just read it a little bit, just maybe to be like, okay, that's why. This is why you do this, or maybe this is why you do, or this is why you think this way, kind of thing. But also just to make it broader, I don't know. I think, like I said before, just anybody who would like to feel, just like, I think everyone should read the book, and I think that our lives are so, and our stories in every chapter that in the book, they're so different, but not at the same time.
Mhm.
So I think that anybody who picks up the book will identify with something in the book, because at the end of the day, we all are, you know, living in the United States. We're all humans. We all have emotions and childhoods and teenage years and adulthood. So I think everyone should read it, and that's, I guess, my goal is to, for someone to be like, hey, this book looks interesting, let's pick it up, and then they get something from, for one of our chapters.
Mhm.
So that's kind of like, I think everyone should read it, but again, maybe there's a better answer, but that's my answer right now.
No, definitely. And again, by reading this book, and as you said, maybe one chapter they will connect with a little bit more, they may be able to understand a little bit about the stories of other undocumented people in this country, right? There's 11, maybe 12 million undocumented people. And so by reading the book, hopefully they'll get a glimpse into the lives of those who have DACA, but those who don't have DACA. How many people, right, applied in 2021 and then didn't qualify for DACA? So understanding the challenges, because all of y'all didn't have DACA, right, until 2012, 13, 14, whenever you got your work permit for the first time. And so your lives were different, right, at that time. And so it's important. Itzel, coming back to you, from your perspective, you are a counselor at a school, right? And I'm sure you work with undocumented students and families. Who should read this book?
Yeah, at the end of my chapter, I did dedicate this book to a lot of the undocumented students, particularly that are trying to find their identity. So, because I think for a long time as a DACA student or person, I had a hard time trying to find where I fit in or who I was or how I felt. I always felt very proud to be Mexican, but I also felt like this is my home, and I was neither or. So I definitely want students to read this to feel inspired, but mainly those students that don't have DACA, because I actually didn't have DACA till 2016. So I did go to school. I did go to the JC before I had DACA. So I want students to read it and know that their education is something that no one can take away from you. And I want to inspire those young souls, right, that are trying to figure out who they are and that they're capable of so much more. I mean, if I was to tell the young person in me, a little girl in me, I wouldn't have thought I could get this far. So I definitely want teenagers to read this book.
Definitely. Maria, you are a teacher. You have a master's degree in the area of education. You're a teacher now. And I know that maybe in a future interview, we'll talk about the next steps, the next goals that you have. But from your perspective as a DACA recipient, who should read this book?
First and foremost, I think undocumented people in general should read this book. Even though, you know, a lot of us just said that it was traumatic to write it, or it brought a lot of emotions. I really want to, in a loving way, challenge us to tap into maybe not everything, but at least something, right? And especially, I would love undocumented people of all ages, because there's some undocumented people who have lived here for over three decades, and they're still experiencing what it means to be undocumented, right? Mm-hmm. And youth who are coming up, and like we've talked about before, maybe some people are ashamed to speak about it. Some people are afraid to speak about it. The reason why people don't speak about being undocumented is for multiple reasons, right? So I think first and foremost, undocumented people in general, of whatever ethnic background you are, whatever nationality you are, I would hope, even though that this is primarily stories of people from Mexico and Central America, even if it's somebody from, again, an African country, an Asian country, right, that has migrated here, I would hope that it moves something in them to maybe write something themselves, right, or reach out and see how can we do another anthology, right, with a more varied perspective from people from different countries. And I also think that people who are interested, right, whether you have vitriol or hate towards immigrants or undocumented people, I would challenge you to read this and see if you still can't find the humanity within the people that you might hold a lot of hatred towards, right? Is that hatred truly yours, or has it been passed down through your family, through the media, through your community? I would challenge you to try to not find the humanity, because I would say first and foremost, our stories are centering a human experience. Mm-hmm. I also think that just people in general, right? Whether you're supportive or not of the immigrant community, I think people living within the United States, whether you're able to vote or not, I think you should open yourself up to reading the book, because we've been here and we are here and we're going to continue to be here. The United States used to exploit enslaved African Americans for free labor, right? And they continue to do so through the form of prisons. But another aspect that has been added is exploiting immigrant labor, and specific immigrant labor, right? Of indigenous and Afro-descendant immigrants. And I would challenge anyone who would be interested in the topic and learning more about what it might mean to be an immigrant and undocumented to at least buy the book. And if you don't like it, let us know, but give it a chance.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that, again, the collection of stories, like you said, an anthology of all these stories, this is a book that could be read in a college level class on sociology, on immigration studies, migration studies, an English professor could use this type of book in order to again expose students to the realities of those who may be sitting around them. From your perspective, Jose, who should be reading this book?
Yeah, so I believe multiple populations, I mean, the entire world will benefit from it. Immigration happens not just in the United States, it happens everywhere in the world. And I'm sure the conditions that we probably experience here are also probably similar or worse or better than the conditions, you know, in other parts of the world. I think that would be an amazing thing to be able to connect to other people to the immigration that happens around the world, not just here in the US. I think also some of the people that will benefit from that is also the people that live in our countries, in Latin America, in all the other countries where we come from, because this is a reality of we have left our homes and we left them for specific reasons that sometimes we wish we would have not, but it would be great for them to be able to also be able to understand that. As you know, many times there could be multiple opinions of what the world of what we experience here. Sometimes there's a notion of like we come here and we have money, and that is not the reality. When we come here, we experience hard work, and so I that would be a great population to also be able to understand like what we experience here. Like if we accomplish something, it's not just something that was given to us, it's something that we worked hard for, giving all the barriers that we have. I think the other population that I would love for them to be able to have a conversation with us in regards by reading this book is the population who is voting, especially who's voting in a more conservative way. Whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, and whatever your opinions are, you will always learn something from us. And I think being open to the idea that we are still humans, we are just the same as you. We still have experiences that we can relate to you, and there's and at the same time there are differences that it's okay to have differences, that you have differences that we accept, as well as we would like to be accepted for those differences as well too. So I think that would be a great population to be able to read that, because they probably will learn, and we probably will vote differently, and we'll probably make a better world by being able to decide that, be able to have that conversation. And then lastly, of course, our undocumented population, because they are not alone. We have been able to provide a voice, or we are trying to provide a voice with them with this book. And many other people are doing it through other ways, other media, and multiple ways of how they're doing to promote their voices and giving us a voice. So if anything, more for us to unify even further, as well as try to have more people to support us, and so that we can also support them at some point. It's not, for me, I wouldn't like them to feel like any sort of fault, but more of a, we hear you, and let's get together and let's see what can we do now. Let's really make our vote count for whatever is coming up later on. Like if politicians are really not doing anything for us, and what the people have voted, like let's stand up and let's really ask for what we have hired you to do for all those politicians. So I really wish, for this book to be able to provide that voice for not just undocumented, but everyone else, to really have more just for everyone. I think we all deserve that.
It's interesting. Thank you for that. It's interesting how when you really sit down and you ask Democrats and Republicans, what is it that they want about 99% of the same thing. They just have been manipulated to believe that the other people are the opposition and that they're never supposed to talk to each other. And so I think it's important, again, in writing this book, you all went through so many different experiences. I am grateful that you had the courage to be able to go through this whole process. It took months and months of collaboration. I love the part where after you were supposed to write it, I said, "Oh, we're gonna hire somebody to review the grammar and everything else," and you said no, right? That you wanted to support each other and review each other's work to make sure that it continued to be your voices. And then we gave it back to you, and you reviewed it and said, "Yeah, it still looks like what I want to say," right? So the whole process has been, I'm sure, challenging for some or all of you, but I think that the final product will tell wonderful stories that will have ups and downs. And most importantly, it will educate the undocumented community that it is possible to succeed. As Jose said, it will hopefully educate people in other countries that life is not easy for undocumented people in this country. We recently visited Mexico City about a month ago, and there are a lot of people when they find out that that you are all DACA and you're traveling back legally and then coming back to this country, they want to migrate to this country because they continue to see commercials and clothing and everything else that says, "Oh, life in this country of the divided states is easy." And you and I know that that's not the truth. So again, thank you to all of you all for your contributions to this book, The Journey of DACA Students Living in the United States Today. And thank you for having that courage to share. And then, obviously, thank you for taking the time to be here to have an actual discussion about this. For people who are interested, you can check out our website, lideresdelfuturo.org. And in that website, you can find a direct link to Amazon, or you can go to amazon.com and just type DACA students, and the book will pop up. So I want to thank all of you all for taking the time and being here. Eric Palafox will soon have his PhD from UC Davis. Itzel has a master's degree. Maria has a master's degree. Jose has a bachelor's degree. And one of the things that we made clear in this book for anybody who reads it is just because all of you have between a bachelor's and a master's doesn't mean that that is the only type of stories that we wanted to collect. We opened this opportunity to people who never had the opportunity to go to college, right? But in this society, we don't want to send the wrong message either with our book to suggest that only you all deserve to tell your stories. Everybody should have the opportunity to tell their story, and that the level of education that people achieve is not representative of how hard you're willing to work or your willingness, but the many opportunities that are provided and the risk that you took in order to be able to do that. So again, I want to thank you all for taking the time, Eric, Itzel, Maria, and Jose. And I'm sure in the near future, we'll have more individual one-on-one conversations about this book. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a wonderful day. This is Líderes del Futuro Avanzando. And again, check out our website, lideresdelfuturo.org. There's more information and ways that you can support the undocumented refugee communities. We are always looking for support in order to support those communities. Thank you for your time.